That's blood. She leans into me and she goes, you're filled with blood. What do you mean I'm filled with blood? To preface this video, this is a story about my health and stuff I was going through that I've previously talked about a little bit on stream, but I've always been incredibly vague about. I've never given detail. I've never talked, other than one time maybe, about the severity, but not really. I think I mentioned, hey, I almost died to people, and they thought maybe it was a surgery only related.
I was inspired to watch this because after my own health struggles, I was like, there's a lot of VTubers that have been through things that should have killed them and they're still standing, and it's really inspiring. Iron Mouse obviously being a big one for many of us, but I don't think a whole lot of people know about GEEGA's cancer journey.
The thing, but realistically, it was a lot more than that. And this ties into why I'm a streamer now, why I quit a long tech career to be doing something unstable and frankly that, you know, could very well not pay that well like this. So I just want to tell this story and make sure that people understand those whys. So hopefully that explains that for you guys.
That's why I became a VTuber. Health problems. I could be mistaken, but I think that that's a big reason why Iron Mouse also became a VTuber. I think a lot of people assume that VTubers become VTubers because it's fun, but a lot of people chose this medium because they had to. IRL opportunities weren't accessible and they had to build a life somehow, and the virtual world was the most accessible way to do that. And a lot of these stories are really inspiring. I think that it can help a lot of people, especially with the economy being what it is, and health problems are more common today than they were decades ago. I think a lot of people are really going through it right now, and knowing that other people have been through what you've been through and they are where they are today, even despite it, can be really empowering for people.
You guys, let's go. I want to talk about one thing that I promised I would talk about. I'm gonna talk about my health situation actually, because I promised I would, and I wanted to wait until it was like long gone before I did, but it also factors into me waiting so long to do 3D, waiting so long because I couldn't move in certain ways, things like that. I just felt like this was an apt time to talk about it. You know, it just has to do with my physicality for sure. And reasoning why, you know, I'm gonna get back into like dancing. I'm gonna do dance content, stuff like that. Some stuff I won't be able to do, but I'm able to do a lot of it now, which is huge for me. I've come a very long way. This is like a big milestone, being able to stand up and do this and move around. The fact that I can like lift my leg again and stuff like that is really big, because legitimately when I got out of surgery and I was recovering and I was doing my PT and doing all this stuff, even before that, I could do this. But you know, a lot of what I did for a long time was in relation to dancing and to sports. And I still kept some of those hobbies on the side. Obviously, I wasn't doing 10 sports a day, you know, adult life, but I was still dancing and stuff like that. That was always something that I kept. And then at some point, I couldn't do it anymore. When I first started VTubing, I was like, oh yeah, I really want to get back into this in a way where I can do it for content, you know, like do it for fun and have it be shown.
That's really smart, actually. Like, that's a really fun way to incorporate your IRL passions into like VTubing, but keeping the separation.
But I couldn't. Not 100% fully recovered, but I am not in a scary health place, you know, like I'm good and I'm just building up strength. That's really all. I'm just building up strength at this point and hoping that nothing else happens in the future. But yeah, so I will preface this by saying I think a lot of parts of this story are really funny. So I'm going to be talking about my own health failing and mortality and laughing. And I'm sorry ahead of time if you don't find some of it funny, but I, in retrospect, find a lot of this funny. Okay, it was not a funny time at the time, but for me, you know, when I look back on it, I'm like, that thing she said was hilarious. That doctor, you know. So just saying.
I feel that way about my own health journey in some ways, so I totally understand.
About, I want to say 4 or 5 years before I had my surgery, I had symptoms then that I did not know were symptoms of what was going on with me. And what it was, I was having an issue with my skin, which I never had. When I was younger, when I was a teenager and all through adult years, never had an issue with skin. I have a dry skin a little bit, never broke out. I was just one of the people that avoided all that. But out of nowhere, into my adulthood, I started having an issue with my skin. Only below the corners of my mouth, and not on like my chin in the middle, just like the outer, like both sides. And I was like, what is this? I avoided this as a teenager. What? No, no. So I went to doctors and they were like, actually, this is really normal for women. Throughout your life, you have hormonal shifts or you have things going on. And then, you know, you just develop this. And sometimes it just works itself out, goes away. Sometimes it stays forever. And I was like,
Oh no, is this a classic like misdiagnosis moment?
fuck, shit. You know, I was like, okay. I didn't think too much of it, took note of it, got really into skincare. About a year and a half of that, it went away. And during that time, we had tried different things. They tried putting me on different things to adjust hormones and stuff like that because nothing topical would fix it. It was not an issue with my skin on the outside. This was caused by hormones. So I said, okay, you know, let's try these things. And they all made me feel like shit, or they didn't work out that well, or they caused other issues that I didn't like. So I was like, let's not do this. I'll just deal with it because the issue wasn't that bad. It was just a new thing for me, right? It's done. It just goes away. Okay, yay! Woo! This was apparently really normal, and they did a lot of various tests and things and found nothing wrong. So I said, okay, fine.
Wow. I feel like that's unusual. Interesting. Just the thought of them really doing comprehensive testing and it all came back fine and the symptoms just went away. Wow.
Fast forward to about a year and a half before I end up having my surgery. So a couple years later, I've always been relatively thin. When I wake up in the morning, if I'm laying down on my bed and I look down, if I haven't eaten anything and I don't have to pee real bad, stomach flat. And I noticed at some point that I just kept being bloated. Not constantly, but you know, we're gonna talk about women's health. Sorry, fellas. But when I would have my period, I would bloat. I would go in and out, you know? And at some point I was like, it's not going down that much. And I'm bloating more and more each time, and it's getting more painful each time. Since that skin issue up until then, it had incredibly gradually been getting worse, and I didn't notice because it happened over the course of like 3-4 years. Which again, when you go to a doctor and talk about that, they go, well, yeah, that happens to a lot of people, because it does. Yeah, so we thought it was something like PCOS, which are like ovarian cysts and things where you get little cysts, they're very normal. A lot of women get them on their ovaries and things, and they cause hormonal issues, which then cause the skin thing and cause the pain, right? All of that.
Oh, I see.
So it all sounded really normal. And there's not really anything you can do about them too. They're just things you have to live with. So I said, okay, well, that's my issue. Going back to the like laying down and looking at myself thing, it was just getting worse and worse. I started measuring myself. Over the course of a year, I started measuring multiple points on my waist down to like my hip area, because something I noticed was the bloating when I was at my smallest each month was getting bigger. And I was like, huh, but I'm doing less. And I started having trouble eating, and I wasn't eating enough. My caloric intake was like a little low, that I was slowly losing weight. I started measuring my weight. I started measuring around my legs, around my arms, everything. I was getting bigger here a little bit, just very low down. And I was bloating more and more when I would bloat, but I was getting smaller everywhere else, and I was losing weight, and I was having a harder and harder time eating over time. I was starting eventually, I didn't realize this, I was starting to have trouble breathing as well. Diaphragm not expanding, more chest breathing rather than stomach breathing. So I'm going to doctors throughout all of this. I'm taking it seriously, you know, and
I'm so glad that she took measurements. A lot of people, when they feel symptoms, like maybe they'll write down the symptoms, but they won't actually take numerical data of what is happening. And that is so important because unfortunately, describing your symptoms can be very subjective, right? Like that's not hard data. It can be kind of misconstrued as something else. But once you have data, that's a lot harder to misconstrue. And it's easier for providers to narrow down the possibilities with something a bit more concrete. So I'm so glad she did that.
And they do tests and things, and it points to really normal shit, and they're like, yeah, it's PCOS, yeah, it's this, it's that, you know, maybe it's endometriosis, those kinds
Oh no, I can relate to this too much.
of things. But one day I'm looking down and I see, you know, I'm bloating, but it's right deviated. It's not in the center, which when you bloat, you know, it's your uterus bloating, it's in the center. It's not in the center, it's a little to the right. And the moment I saw that, I was like, no, I'm not doing like just blood tests and stuff anymore. So I had a new doctor, a new GP at this point. So I go to her, keyword her, because she was very, very familiar with this kind of stuff. And she has me lay down. She has me lay down on the table. You know, I'm looking out. I'm laying down on the table. Not like that though. She's pressing. She's pressing everything. And we realized something. Now, first off, what she says, now I thought this, in retrospect, hilarious. Something you never want to hear from your doctor. She's pressing, saying nothing, just examining. And she goes, I don't like that. Just like that. I don't like that. I was
At least she was honest.
just like, hold on. Why'd you say it like that? You know, I too was already going to that appointment thinking this is going to be something insanely bad, because I can't imagine what else it is. She's pressing on my abdomen, my lower abdomen, kind of right below my belly button on either side. And we notice, okay, press right now. Press into your abdomen. what happens? You're squishy, right? Your tissues, your organs, everything are squishy, so your fingers just kind of go in and it squishes in. And then when you let go, it releases, right? That's not what was happening. I pooped. No, what she was doing was she was pressing, and when she would press on it, if one side she would press on would go down, the other side would go up. And it would go like this. So when she would press one side, it would go, meaning there was a lot of pressure, or it was at tension, or it was perhaps more than it was not soft tissue. You know, as soon as we both see that, we're like, oh, she goes, you're not pregnant, right? And I said, absolutely not. Because every single time I went to any doctor, they all asked me that question, and they all made me take a test anyway, even though I said I'm not. And not just the normal test, they made me do blood tests every time. And I said, I've had like 20 blood tests in the past year. I'm pretty sure it's not that. And if it happens,
Yeah, I think they have to check that too. Like, even if you're certain, sometimes doctors are like, well, I can't like believe you. Because like, what if you're wrong, you know? And what if that obscures like the symptoms or something that we see? So a lot of them will test anyway. Although I don't know how I feel about that personally.
having this issue for years. And she was like, all right, we're still going to do the blood test. I was like, oh, God, again? You know, they made me do this blood test every single time. Every single time. Yeah, my name is not Mary. It was not that ever. She added a lot of other stuff into the blood test, though. So they took like 12 vials of blood, unironically, 12 vials. And I slept in my car for a while and ate some food, and I sat there for like 2 hours and then drove home. We get the test back and things look pretty normal. A couple of levels of some things a little off, but pretty normal, which means
12 is a lot. I get anemia from just 2 or 3. 12? And you're a small person? Holy crap. She must have a really efficient heart, just like tons of red blood cells.
wow, we don't have answers, we have to do more. That's what that means. And she said, I don't want to biopsy this because we don't have eyes on it. We don't have visuals on it. So let's do an ultrasound. I sent in for an ultrasound. The ultrasound is important because it lets you see how dense things are. When you look at an ultrasound, it's like a black and white image, right? Anything that appears white is really dense. It's usually bone. Anything that is appearing black is like liquid or air. So I'm laying down. They put the jelly on me. It's all cold. It feels freaky. The technician, and this is months later, by the way, because things take forever to get, apparently. Yeah, I ate my twin in the womb. Now the technician puts the wand on me and she starts looking around. She's going, scanning. She's pushing and she's pushing, and I'm like, stop pushing, because by this thing has been growing, by the way. It started growing exponentially. So the bigger it got, the bigger I got faster. And you know what my doctor told me before I left? She was like, hey, I don't know what this is. Make sure it doesn't rupture. Don't
Oh no.
move a lot. Don't bend a lot. Don't lift your leg. You know, don't do any of this. Make sure it doesn't rupture because we don't know what this is. We don't know what's in it. Don't, you know, and I was like, hey, I haven't been because I can't anyway. Because by this point, I was like really not able to move that well. I was still able to move, but I was having a lot of trouble. I was walking like, you know, a little bit. So I already was kind of aware of that, but her saying it was good. So go to the ultrasound lady. She's really like digging in, and I'm like, you know, I'm like, ah. And she was like, don't worry, I won't do anything. And I was like, okay. So that was probably one
Oh no, this sounds so painful.
of the worst experiences of my life, was me just sitting there being ultra stressed while the ultrasound lady is like pressing into this thing that my doctor said don't rupture. And I was like, stop it. I was like, my doctor said I can't rupture this. And she said, that's okay. Well, I just need to get underneath it. And she goes around the side of it. She starts like digging under it, trying to get the wand under it, because she needs to see these horizontal cross sections.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
I know what she's talking about. I had that same ultrasound on numerous parts of my body as well.
Like, she's like, don't worry, I won't pop it. And I go, okay, just be gentle with the side thing. And she was like, yep. And it was crazy. Yeah, lady was not chilling. It was funny as fuck. So she gets in there, she gets a good angle. She goes, look at the monitor. I look up at the monitor. She goes, you familiar with like how to read these? And I was like, yeah, I am. So she has that thing, horizontal cross section, you know, looking at it from this side, this way, with me laying down. And it's mostly black. Black is like liquid or air. It's a big circle. And it's mostly black with an edge with a border. It's a clear encased circle. And there's something inside of it that is gray, varying types of gray. And there's a lot of black, meaning liquid. She says one of the funniest things I've ever heard. She's holding it there and she goes, okay, look at the liquid. And I go, all right. She goes, fix your eyes on it. I go, okay. She goes, I'm going to shake you. I'm gonna shake you. So she's got me on the table like this. She goes, I'm gonna shake you, and I want you to look at what you see in the liquid. And I was like, okay. She goes, and she shakes her hand a little. She goes, like a little, and I look, and I see particulates floating around. I see little bits, little dots going, getting unsettled, like silt in a riverbed, right? Getting kicked up. And I'm like, what is that? She goes, do you see that? You see how some of them look like little strips, little scraps? Some of them look like little dots? I was like, yeah. She goes, that's blood. She leans into me and she goes, you're filled with blood.
I mean, the blood does belong inside the body. I think she meant something else, though.
I was like, what? she leaned in and said, you're filled with blood. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm filled with blood? Now, at the time, horrifying. Looking back, that was funny as fuck. I was like, what do you mean I'm filled with blood? And the way she said it, too, the way she leaned in really close and said, you're filled with blood. I was like, what? It was so funny. It was so funny. Those little scraps and those little particulate bits were apparently, you know, like the bits of coagulated blood that kind of chunked together. And she was like, most of this liquid is going to be blood. And I was like, okay. Why? And what is this? Yeah, and what do I do? Okay, I'm filled with blood.
Yeah, that was a very, like, that's the most ambiguous answer someone could give you about what something abnormal in your body is. It's blood. I mean, there is other blood in my body too, so that doesn't really narrow it down.
What do I do? So she says, well, we don't know what all of this liquid is, but, you know, it's clearly like a lot of it's blood. I was like, okay. And then she says, but what I'm more concerned about is this solid thing in here. Now, the cool thing with ultrasounds is you can actually measure stuff. It was like a pancake where it was kind of flat depth-wise. Not completely flat. It was 4 or 5 centimeters in depth, which is actually not that flat for a thing in your body, actually, if I'm being honest. But compared to its width and height, I don't remember the exact size, but if I open my hand up all the way like this, it was like a circle that big in there. So take your own hand and just put it against your stomach and imagine like a disc. And it was close to the back, kind of close to my spine. And it was encased in a cyst. That's what all the liquid was in. And the cyst went from the very bottom of my diaphragm all the way down to my bladder. It filled my entire abdomen. When she gave me the images and we were sitting there going over them, she said, let's play a game.
Why would you say it like that?
I think she asked me. Find the liver, spot the organs, hide and seek, Balatro. God, I wish. Mario Kart. What a technician, man. What a technician. I actually, in retrospect, I love this lady. At the time, I was like, you are doing me nothing good right now. This is terrible. This is completely terrible. But she says, where are your organs? Can you point to them and identify any of them? And I'm looking at these ultrasounds, and I'm looking at these cross sections of my body, and it's real hard to tell what is what. Number one, you can't even see most of them. You can't see the edges of them.
Yeah.
They're all jumbled together. Many things seem to be misplaced. Yeah, inside my body was my answer, actually. She was like, where are they? And I was like, well, I think they're at least in there. And she went, yes, they're in there, which is good. She said it just like that. They are in there. I was like, okay, all right. We're looking it over. She's pointing out where my organs are, and they're all just like not in the right spot. This is what we call Mass Effect, not the video game. The term Mass Effect comes from something just being a mass. That's it. It could be things like displacement of organs. It could be things like organs not functioning properly because they're pressed on, which could be, you know, oh, like I can't eat as much because my stomach can't expand, for example. It could also be, ooh, this thing is now excreting the wrong hormones or weird amounts of them because it's being pressed on. It you know, something like that. Obviously my question was, how did this get so big and I didn't realize? At this point, I knew something was wrong, but I was like, this thing is huge. There's no way I didn't even know it was in me before. And she was like, yeah, people don't realize they have things like this because your organs are squishy and soft. So when they grow, they push the organs out of the way first. And then you start to see it express on the outside, but it has to push against the muscle layer. It has to have no room in the middle and nothing to squish around before it starts to express outwardly in any way. So she was like, your organs have been moved around for a long while. And that's probably what's caused, you know, a lot of the weird symptoms you've been having. And I was like, oh. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So I have a cyst in me that is classified as giant. I don't remember the dimensions at that time, but I know height-wise it was more than 20 centimeters. Keep in mind I'm 4'10", and I had only recently noticed it. So we figured that information out from the ultrasound. I go back to my doctor, we're going over the images. And we're all really concerned about not the cyst itself, because I'll be honest, huge ones are scary, but cysts are really normal for women. And they get rid of them all the time. A lot of women have them. Almost all women get them at some point. Big, not really, but like little ones, it's normal. That wasn't what we were concerned about, especially because it was just one cyst. It didn't have septations, which is when it's like segmented and they're like multiple parts blobbed together. It didn't have that, that was all fine. But there was some sort of solid mass in it. That is not good, because now it's a complex cyst. It's not a simple cyst. That's bad, right? And she's like, yeah, we need to get an MRI because we can't tell what this is from this. We need to do an MRI to get the tissue makeup a bit more and decide how we want to treat or what we want to do. That takes months to get this MRI, of course, because, while we are at this point suspecting really bad things that this could be, we don't have direct evidence and we can't biopsy it because you cannot puncture this thing. Depending on what's in it, we need to get an MRI. But because we don't have any direct evidence of it being anything like crazy, near fatal, whatever, they're like, that means you're like low on the wait list. Also, because I'm not super old, I'm not currently dying as far as they know, et cetera, right? So I have to wait
I hate the American healthcare system.
Forever, and just live with this thing and hope every day that it doesn't pop, not being able to move properly, having all these other health complications, like tons of other health complications with almost every organ. My heart was even being pressed on when I breathed, right? For example.
How can you be at the lower end of the wait list with all those symptoms? That's my question. Waiting months with all those symptoms? How much do you need to have wrong with you to be near the top? I mean, I guess you need to be dying, actually. I mean, that does sound pretty American.
Example, there's just no room, everything. But I was fine because I wasn't super old and I didn't have any biopsies saying that it was something bad, so, right? So I was waiting and I eventually get this MRI. They inject the contrast, they do the MRI again, and we get the results, whatever. We don't get the full results, the technician does it and they give you some initial images, but they don't give you the full report. So we get the MRI and I'm reading through everything. Before I look at the images, so I'm just reading through everything. This thing had grown by this point too. It's like I said, growing exponentially. The bigger it gets, the more it's growing. And they're saying this is a cyst filled with a lot of liquid, and it has some sort of solid bit in it. And one of the notes on there says, right ovary not found, not pictured, reason missing.
Oh no.
Missing? I was like, what? So I was like, I think I know exactly what's going on here at this point, right? I'm talking to my doctor about this. I'm talking to her about my old symptoms of having the skin issue, which often come from women having some sort of ovary issue, right? Or some sort of cyst or something. So I was like, that is probably my ovary.
Oh
she
my
was like,
God.
I wouldn't doubt it. We don't know until we like physically have it in our hands. We won't know, but we think that's what it is. Now, we had been suspecting this a long while before this, but at this point, she's like, I'm gonna send you to an oncologist and we're gonna get you fully looked at. We're gonna do everything, because at this point, we're like, what else could this be? So we're like, this has gotta be cancer. It has to be. What else? What else could it be? Yeah. Especially looking at the MRI. Normally, when a tumor is like on the MRI, all the same color, all the same kind of density, it's all one type of tissue. That's just a normal benign thing. This one was complex. It had a lot of different densities, a lot of different materials in it, a lot of different tissue types. And when you see that, you're like, that's something that's mutating as it grows. Like you can tell. Not just that, I told you it was like the shape of a pancake. It actually, at the time of the ultrasound too, had a tendril sticking out the front. It looked like a little finger. It had this long tendril, and then at the end of it, it had like what looked like a hand almost. It was like
Oh no.
Spreading like almost like a nerve. You ever see a nerve how it branches? It's like one long synapse, and then it's at the end it has like a little, It was that attaching to.
That is terrifying. Could you imagine walking around with that and knowing it's there?
The side. So I was like, oh, he's reaching. He's looking for places to go. It's venom. So we are now fully like sending me to an oncologist. We're like, this has got to be cancer. We should treat it like it is, and if it isn't, this is still the person to go to treat it either way. Like, this is still the right surgeon for this thing, no matter what, because everything about the surgery is the same, even if that's not what the cells actually are. So I go and I talk to my surgeon, and he's like, well, we got to get this out of you, but we can't rupture it. And he's like, so I'm really sorry, but I think the approach we're going to take, he pulls out his marker to like draw, the surgical lines on me. He draws a line from a couple inches above my belly button, all the way down to basically as low as you can go before you hit bone. A dotted line. He goes around my belly button a little bit. And he goes, we're gonna have to do this to open and get it out. And no, they could not do a C-section, which is a much more forgiving cut that's horizontal. Vertical ones are terrible, they're the worst, but it was the only way to approach this because of what it was adhered to. Adhesions are when growth or an organ or something adheres to something else. It kind of grows tissue between the two, like glue. He was like, we're gonna have to go. It just draws this huge line, and I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, now it's gonna be tough because you're really small. And keep in mind, I wasn't eating well. I wasn't moving around very well. He was like, yeah, you're not my ideal surgery candidate, is what he said. And I was like, I know. He said, but your weight's also a good thing because the more weight you have on you, the worse problems you have with recovery sometimes as well in other ways. So, you know, there are good and bad things here. He was being really nice, but he also wasn't sugarcoating it. I was like, all right, do we just do that? And he said, well, I know this guy. He tells me about his friend, who's also another great surgeon for oncology and you know, all sorts of like pelvic area and lower abdominal area issues. He goes, I've got a guy who normally you can never get in with because this guy's a really good surgeon and he's booked out. He's completely booked up. And he said, but your case is really bad. So I'm gonna ask him if he will take you because he is really good at doing surgeries, not this way, in other ways that are easier to recover from. And I was like, give me his number. Let's talk to him, let's go. I look up his accolades, he's really good. Thankfully, my case was really fucking bad. So the guy was like recommending me to his genius friend or whatever. You know what? This guy literally specializes in freak cases like mine. And mine was, you know, a giant cyst, literally classified as giant on paper. They wrote the word giant. And this guy just does these types of surgeries a lot. This is his bread and butter. And I was like, okay, I would like to go to the guy who's done this more than other people because not many people have operated on one this large. And I don't want to go to the guy who's done it once or twice. I want to go to the guy that is like, wow, I love doing this specific thing. So I go to this dude.
It's so fortunate that her doctor knew someone so specialized and with such a good track record, because I can relate to that. Having all these different health factors that make you an unusual patient can make it so much harder to find good healthcare in normal situations and also in severe situations like this. I mean, even in my case, I'm a really short person. And just that by itself does complicate a lot of things, because if you're not average height, it's like, okay, when you need anesthesia, do they give you an adult dose because you're technically an adult? Or do they give you like a teenager dose because you're so short you have like the height of a teenager? There's like this gray area in there that people have to navigate around. And if they make one small mistake on, say, a smaller person, well, we're smaller, so every bit of damage affects us more typically, and smaller bodies can be more sensitive. So having a really good medical provider is so important. The risks of going with an ordinary doctor is not worth it. Not worth it if you have special circumstances.
And he was like, okay, this dotted line all the way down the middle, we can do this. This is plan B. I'm gonna try my plan A, which I'll tell you in a second, but this is plan B. If it doesn't go well, we will swap to this mid-surgery and do it to make sure it gets out of you whole, right? Said, but here's plan A. Said, we're gonna make a lot of incisions around it and one down the middle, and we're gonna try to do it laparoscopically. And I was like, how? There's no room. And he was like, trust and believe. So they wanted to do it laparoscopically, but the thing is, normally laparoscopic surgery, which is when they get in there with tools through tiny incisions and cameras and things, they do it with like 2 or 3 incisions. He was like, we're gonna have to do it with a lot, but trust me, it's gonna be so much easier for you to recover from than doing a full open one. And I was like, you know what, I believe that, because both are bad. And he was like, I'm so sorry it's so many incisions, but you know, both of these cases are terrible, so I'm gonna do the one that's less bad. I said, okay. Because at this point, it was so big, I had a hard time walking. I couldn't eat, and I could not get enough calories in me. Like I would eat little bits throughout the day as often as I could, and I would eat high calorie stuff. I still could not get enough in me. And I was like, at this point, like we have to do it. There's no option. I'm just gonna keep dropping weight, which is gonna be really bad with, you know, needing to have a surgery. So we, and I was streaming through all of it, by the way. I was streaming through all of it. And things like my breathing changed, so it was actually hard to talk. And can you imagine that? You know how much I talk? My laugh changed. The way I laugh changed because my diaphragm couldn't move properly. I think nowadays I laugh a little more like how I used to beforehand, but I had to change how I did all that. you notice actually? Chatters did notice, because I talked about my health. I didn't
Wow.
give specifics, but I said, hey, I have some issues going on, whatever, and I didn't want to scare anyone, so I wasn't gonna be like, yes, might be.
Yeah, I can relate to that. A lot of VTubers, they don't want to share the bad news until like they at least know and ideally can resolve it all. So like we can say at least, but there's a happy ending. Like don't worry, everything's fine. It's really sweet actually how many VTubers really consider like the mental health of their viewers and being like, you know, maybe I want to take you along for this journey, but if it crosses a certain threshold, you know, I'd rather come back to you and tell you about it when it's all resolved and we can all just be happy it's over and have fun and not worry a whole bunch of people, you know? VTubers, we really care about our audience and how you guys feel.
Dying, you know, whatever. The whole time, the prognosis was not looking good, and the staging was not going well, the expected staging. So the idea was, you're gonna get out of this surgery. It's progressed a lot. So even though if we get this out, it's not gonna go well, very likely. Your likelihood of making it is still not great. Not through the surgery, but like after that, you know? So this was the assumption this whole time. You know, so of course at this point I'm like, well, let's just do the surgery. Like, you know what I mean? There's no like, ooh, the recovery is gonna be hard. I was like, let's just do whatever you wanna do. Because if you think it might work, then that's what we have to do. Did you make it? No, I died on the operating table. And now I'm coming at you from the afterlife. You had to wait a while to get to the point where I could do the surgery because
VTuber discovers the true afterlife. It was Twitch all along. Guys, you can see your grandparents again. You just got to go to twitch.tv/grandma, and there she is. She's been waiting this whole time. You haven't even visited her once. Couldn't even call her when she was alive. Now you can't even watch her stream from the afterlife. Ungrateful grandkids. Ungrateful.
again, even though he was pushing to move mine up, if you're not actively dying in that moment and they haven't biopsied and found cancer cells 100%, then they can't say, you have to, you know, put this person ahead of other people. So I just had to wait again for my surgery. So much waiting. And again, it's like getting bigger and bigger the whole time, getting worse, spreading, you know, all of that. So I kind of lived with knowing that I had something that was like 90% likelihood of being malignant for like 8 months. Like eight straight months of pretty much knowing that it was malignant, but couldn't do anything. I was just like, okay, well, I'll just stream, I guess.
The ire I have for the healthcare system. This shouldn't be allowed. I honestly think that it should be a crime. Sue me, but I feel like the healthcare system, if it's truly about preserving the health of people, and there's something there that is growing, the symptoms are severe enough a person is having a hard time functioning at a basic level. And it's very likely to be malignant given what it looks like and how it's acting. I think it's ridiculous to even have to wait more than like maybe 90 days. And I think that's too long. I just think that should be like the emergency. The healthcare system is somehow overrun by something like COVID and the hospitals are just overfilled and you got to wait that long. But ideally, 30 days, man. 30 days, I think within 30 days, you should be getting support. That's ridiculous. That is terrifying.
So when people ask me, hey, why aren't you doing your old job? Like, I don't understand why you would quit like your really good tech job to be a streamer. Because I wasn't gonna, in my mind, have my tech job anyway. So why not just stream, right? That's kind of where that came from. I didn't want to say it so morbidly before. You know what I mean? I didn't want to freak out chat before, but that's really what it was, you know? And it worked out, which was great. But that was the thought process. So I was like, yeah, might as well. So I was just doing my thing. The surgery comes up. We do the surgery. It was a long one, and I wasn't gonna know how it went, what approach they took, if they had to do plan A and it was fine, or plan B had to go and happen, until I would wake up. So I wake up, and thank God they were able to do plan A, and the way they did the surgery was they did a lot of incisions around the thing, stuck tools in, removed all the adhesions. That took fucking forever, and the dude was doing it. Apparently the camera footage, normally when you do laparoscopic surgery, they pump some air in you so that they have room to work. They put air in me, but they couldn't see shit. They couldn't see shit because there's no room. There was no room. Like, where's the air even go? But he did what he could and spent a really long time and went really slowly. Removed all the adhesions, so it was now free floating. It was, in fact, the cyst that was in, not the cyst, but the thing inside was the artist formerly known as my right ovary. So they had to like remove the fallopian tube and a chunk of the uterus to kind of get that cleanly off. That wasn't hard. They do that all the time. Whatever, you know, sew that up. Boom. So they do that, and it is now free floating. So they do an incision through the middle, and they shove a plastic bag in there and put the bag around it and then pull the ends of the bag back out the hole. So the cyst is still in me, but there's a bag around it, and the only opening of the bag is coming out of my middle incision. So then he pops that shit, drains it, takes it apart, pulls it out of a tiny hole, and gets it out that way. So my body does not get exposed to whatever's in there. And that's how they did the surgery, which
Whoa, that's so smart.
worked out. Now, I was a little upset because I really wanted to keep it if they took it out whole, and he promised.
Like a souvenir. What? I guess. What would you do? Put it in a jar, I guess? Like preserved brains, I guess? Was that what she was thinking?
Me that if they did plan B, I was gonna keep it, but they did plan A and they took it out in pieces, so I didn't get to keep it. I was like, man, I wanted to do the formaldehyde jar on the mantle, you know, like display it, like, look at him. I even named it. I had a whole thing for it, you know, whatever. We didn't get to keep him. That's okay. So there he is.
New merch. New GEEGA merch.
Chopped up in a lab. They do little smears. They cube that shit. They cube the whole thing, and they do smears on slides of every little bit of it and test it. And they were like, wow, a good number of these cells are what we call pre-cancer, which means they're expressing a lot of the proteins that would make them cancer cells, but they're not. They're like 90% there. Not all of them have made it to the point where they can spread, which is good. There are also malignant cells in there, absolutely. But a lot of the outer cells, like are on the outside of it, were pre-cancer. So the stuff physically on the outer bit of it was kind of just sitting there and keeping the stuff from the inside from spreading. Now, that being said, if that thing had been left in me for longer, those would have eventually just turned into the same thing. But it kept growing a layer on the outside of pre-cancer cells, which is just a stroke of luck because of where the placement of those cells were and where they were multiplying. It was just really like,
wow.
You know. I did still have to do post-treatment. They were fully expecting that it was going to be a lot more, and we were prepping for that, and we were getting fully ready for that, but it wasn't as bad. Thankfully, I would say 75% of what I needed to do was done by the surgery itself, which was great. And I'll be honest, losing an ovary is nothing. You have two, and the other one just does the job of two when you lose one. So I was like, hey, of all organs to lose, that's great. It's even easier than losing a kidney, to be honest. I was like, will my life be affected? They were like, no, you're not even gonna notice. I was like, oh, cool. I mean, and to be honest, I was like, can you just take all of it out? And they were like, no, that's how you get osteoporosis. I was like, okay, fine. Fair enough. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You kind of need those to not have later issues, but okay. The organ shift took a really long time for things to settle back where they should be. You know, when a woman's pregnant, things happen in a certain way and configuration that's a lot easier to recover from. I had a random cyst on the right side just growing, and it pushed stuff in ways that was not typical like that. Not the way the body's kind of made to handle it. So that was complicated, and I had to keep doing weird movements every day to make sure that stuff settled in the right spot. Yeah, hard to recover from. Exactly. That was a bit weird. The incisions were really hard to recover from. Even though they were small, there was a lot of them, and they were everywhere. So, you know, when you get a laparoscopic surgery, a lot of the time they do it on one side, so you can still pick up your leg on the other side and do stuff. My whole abdomen, I couldn't move. It hurt so bad. But the thing is, I have like freakishly fast healing. When I went in to get checked up on, I went to a nurse who was like checking the incisions and everything. She was like, you know, you're only a week into recovery, but you look like you're 3 weeks in. And I was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, Wolverine. So I woke up and I got out of surgery and I was sitting there and I told you guys the story of what it was like waking up from that and drinking the ginger ale and like throwing up 100 times. I did not get a fun video of myself saying weird things because apparently I didn't talk at all. So I don't have the funny morphine video. I really wanted that. We had to wait about a week after the surgery to actually get the full results of everything. And I continued doing blood tests. I have to do blood tests every couple of months for the next however many years, you know? We haven't seen anything, which is great, but you never know. And this type of cancer has a pretty good chance of showing up. But because we're doing certain tests, it would get caught early if it did show up. So, you know, and not having it show up by now, usually if it shows up again, it's within the next 6 months after the surgery or your initial treatment, because it was post-treatment as well, but, you know, something like that. So it's been well over a year, so it's, like, not looking bad or anything like that, but yeah, we're checking in case we gotta snipe it. Exactly. You guys won ball too? This is the ongoing joke, Heavenly. I've been saying on stream, I've been saying to my friends, to my family for the longest time that I have one ball. And people on stream are like, why do you keep saying that? People in chat would be like, could you stop? Yeah, I have one ball. In the end, I thought I was going to die. All of my medical staff told me I probably was going to make it. So I quit my really good job and then just streamed and became anime. And then I miraculously did not die. And now I'm stuck in this body and I can't get out. Help. Somebody please save me. I can't get out. No, seriously, I can't get out. But yeah, a lot of morbid shit outside of that. I was like, I had already arranged like who was gonna take my cats, who was gonna get my stuff.
We really don't think about those kinds of things until something like cancer strikes, which is kind of good. Like, it's good that we're so present. At the same time, we never expect that these things are going to happen to us until they do, and then you're really stressed out and having to think about all of those arrangements at the same time. And sometimes that can make it a whole lot harder. Life's crazy, man. People go through all sorts of stuff and they survive amazingly, like GEEGA. And on one hand, I'm like, yay for her and also what an inspiration. But I'm also like, the suffering that good people have to go through sometimes, I will never, ever understand. And I could only hope that somehow, some way, she never has to endure it again. Life is so weird sometimes.
I'd already fully arranged it and everything, and then I wake up from the surgery and they're like, oh, you'll be fine. And I was like, what? But I quit my job already. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, not that I want to take it back, but like I don't want to go back.
Oh man, I was looking forward to dying. God, all my plans are ruined. Now I have to live. Oh man.
And be like, no, can we go through with it? But like, I got some people that already think they're getting cats, and now I'm gonna be like, hey, you're not. By the way. Now, realistically, if I went back to the people that I wanted to work with, they would take me in a heartbeat. Because I was the greatest worker of all time, because I'm the smartest person in the world.
I'm glad you are good now, GEEGA.
Yeah, no, they would take me back in an instant, but I was already settled into this, and I needed to heal. I didn't want to deal with, like, physically getting back to it, and then being like, I'm gonna go get on a train and go meet with this executive to talk about this project. I just... No. No, absolutely the fuck not. So I debuted my 2D model that I currently use. So I debuted it then, and I kind of moved it up. Like, I did it a little suddenly, and people were like, why does it keep moving around? I was like, well, I want to get it done before my surgery, because what if, you know? So I did that, and then after my surgery came back, and then streaming worked out, and I went, okay, I'll just be here, I guess. I don't know. So now I just have to stop being a baby, go to the gym more, and eat food. That's really it. I just have to stream and eat food, which is cool. I like that.
That's kind of like the best reward for being a really resilient person and getting through something really shitty. To be able to do something that you thought, oh, like, I'm kind of retiring, you know, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my days. But then to be like, oh, this is my life now. Like, this thing that I thought was going to be the end became a beginning. That's kind of cool. Not the preferred path to VTubing for sure. I've heard of happier IRL to VTuber pipelines for sure. But also, I feel like that's a really great kind of reward for getting through it. For surviving, the fact that she can just do what she wants now versus tech can be kind of stressful.
I live a life much like my cats, where I just sit around and make noises and eat, and I do it professionally. That's cool. TLDR, got cancer, got a surgery, turns out I didn't die, stuck in anime body, help. There you go. And now we're good. Yeah, one ball. Now I have one ball. And that's okay.
That is okay. Wow, that was actually really inspiring. Very scary, but I'm so happy for her. Whether you've had a cancer scare or like a chronic condition that you constantly have to get tested and can lead to other things, it can be so hard sometimes. And I didn't know. Whenever I've popped into a GEEGA stream and I've listened to her talk, like, didn't have the slightest clue that there was anything going on. And I'm not surprised, though, because she's always been so intelligent and her answers to chat's questions are so nuanced and balanced and just so wise. I'm not surprised that she handled it so well. I just hope she never has to go through that again. I feel similar about Iron Mouse. she's been getting a lot better. She can eat solid food now. It's so rewarding to see amazing people be able to continue to grow and to heal and to elevate to this level that they didn't even imagine they could. Because I think for a lot of us who are still in kind of the tough era of our lives, it's so easy to get into our own head about our limitations and like the pain of the current moment, and to like assume that defines what we can do with our lives. You know, thinking that, well, guess this is it for me, or I'm never going to do this thing that I wanted to do. But there's all these examples in VTubing of people who have still, despite it all, been able to rise to this higher level. And I think there's a big reason why VTubers resonate so much with people, because I think a lot of people who watch VTubers and who are VTubers are in a really tough spot, but there's still that hope. There's still that resilience. And deep down in there, underneath all of that like sadness and anxiety and sometimes frustration with life, I think there is also just a burning desire to keep going and to see where life takes us and to make the most of it. And that's a big reason why I love this community and why I'm glad to be here and to be a VTuber too. I'm even thinking about Bao's health journey too, actually. A lot of VTubers I like have been through trauma. Does this say something about me? Does this say something about us? Anyways, all the more reason to show your VTubers, your Oshis, people in the community support, because you never know. You never know what people are going through. So be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!